It's way above my pay grade, but he's planning on doing it from home while he's recuperating. He can operate this equipment and that equipment over there from his house. He's watching you. He can get in you can get into your house too. I told him, I said, when I'm working on my computer, I'm sitting there wondering, I wonder if David's looking at me. I better get out of that particular website. We talked to a gutter man today, Spanky the Gutterer. I don't know what his last name is. What is his? You know what his Hope. Nice guy. He's looking at all of it. He's going to give us a price on that. We've already voted to do the power washing and stuff, and so the downspouts and getting taking care of that. So we're working on that now, and I think that's about it. What we're doing as far as that goes, as far as business is concerned. So moving right along. Windows, still working on the windows, still planning on that. We're going to replace the 2 windows over here next, the ones in my office and the print shop. We replaced 2 in the nursery, but we didn't have enough money to do the other 2, so we just stopped. Now then we're well ahead, so we can do that. We'll get those 2, and then we'll take care of these over here. So it's all. We still got cookbooks if anybody wants to buy them. If anybody wants to buy them or sell them, that's right. That's right. For 1, 25 for 2. 25 for 2, 15 for 1, 25 for 2. How much for 3? Amen. Okay. A friend of mine does this right here. His name Tom Tapp. He pronounced it T-H-T-O-M, Tom Tapp. And he was a pastor down in Lenore City, the Church of the Covered Dish. The preacher's name is Eli Goodbody. And so, Brother Eli, they called him. I'm not sure what the frumpy secretary's name was, but he's pastor of the Red Brick Church on the City Square, First Baptist Church on the City Square of town. And when I was pastoring First Baptist, that was our description of our church. And I had a deacon right there that kind of, his name was also, I've forgotten what his deacon's name is, Jacob something, and his name was Jacob. And he thought I was making fun of him when I would put one of these things up, because talking about the deacon, Jacob somebody, and Howard would think, well, what are you talking about me for? We're going to try to finish up tonight if we can, please. Chapter 10, verse 8. Cush begat Nimrod. We're going to try to do Nimrod tonight and get that completely covered if we can. What do you know about Nimrod? Mean. That it? That pretty well cover it? He began to be a mighty one. It's the same word that the giants in the land, that the days of the flood, he began to be a mighty one in the earth, Nimrod. These are artist conceptions of him, of course. Apparently he was much of a military genius and a mighty one. There's a picture on this one over here of what probably the Tower of Babel probably looked like. It was basically a rounded pyramid, as many people say. Don't forget that when God pronounces a curse on something or somebody or something, that does not necessarily mean it happens right then. The day you eat thereof, you shall surely die. Now, they didn't die the day they ate of the fruit, right? But they began the process. The process began, they began dying. The curse that was on Canaan, the curse that was on his family and so forth, that didn't just normally happen right then, because the people of Israel had to run the Canaanites out of the land of Canaan. But they put up with them, and they're still putting up with them today. Remember, the major doctrines of the Bible are found in these first 11 chapters of Genesis in seed form. Seed form. And so we're talking here about, we're going to look at this particular doctrine right here. You be thinking, what is this teaching us? What lesson is this study of this man right here teaching us? He began to be a mighty one in the earth. Now I want you to see how this verse 10:9. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord, whereof it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter, in God's face. before the Lord. Now think about that. What does that mean to you? The quote was about this man was that he was a mighty, mighty hunter before the Lord, in the face of the Lord, before God, in his place. He was a remarkable man. He really was. The first time that people began talking about Nimrod out in the public was because of a Bugs Bunny cartoon. A Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd. They were talking about the wascally wabbit that got away, and the wascally wabbit was coming up, and he says, Elmer, Fudd, don't be such a Nimrod. As if to say, you claim to be a mighty hunter. Don't be such a mighty hunter. Don't be such a Nimrod. And from that, it began the idea that Nimrod was greatly misunderstood. He may have been a powerful person before the Lord. He might have been. Now let's give him the benefit of a doubt here. It didn't happen that way, but it started out before the Lord. He started out to be a mighty hunter. I say again, the monarchy is probably the best form of government if the monarch is okay. What kind of government is the millennial kingdom going to be? That's going to be a monarch, a theocratic monarchy. So the theocratic monarchy means that Jesus Christ will be the monarch, so therefore it'll be in good hands. But today, a monarch, most of the time, becomes a dictator or a despot. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Greatly misunderstood. This mighty man, this mighty person. It's basically the same thing as we talked about the giants in the land. They were big, mighty people in the land, and there was sin in the land as it was in this day. It's going to happen right here too. If he starts out good, he certainly does not end up that way. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord because it is commonly said. Wherefore it is said, and it's a quote that Moses is quoting here, like Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. Okay? Now, I found this cartoon. Apparently he called her a Nimrod. Well, at least we know he's reading his Bible. There's one way of looking at it. The glass is half full or half empty. However, he's sitting in the corner because he did something wrong. Again, he called her a Nimrod. I had a Christmas tree. I named it Nimrod. I don't know why. I just did. When I was thinking about what can I call it, at one time I had a tree at the house, and I don't know whether God gave it to me or the devil. Somebody gave it to me. Call it Nimrod. So I called my Christmas tree Nimrod. It was a mighty tree. I was one of those kind of guys that went out with Ed, my son, and saw a tree out there on Dewey Strange's property and cut it and cedar tree and stuffed it into my station wagon. And when I got there, about half of it was still. That's one of those. That's an interesting time. So we cut the top of it out and all that. He was a mighty, mighty hunter. Okay, the beginning of his kingdom was Babel. That's a long A sound, Babel, and Erech and Akkad and Calneh in the land of Shinar, or Shinar is the way it would be pronounced. So we're talking about the beginnings of the city of Babylon and the commonly known as the Tower of Babel, or Babel, or Babel, if you want to call it, beginning of the area of Babylon. Unto Shem also, which of the three sons are we talking about there? We're talking about Noah's sons. We're going to find out, and you'll look at this. Notice the third line there. The brother of Japheth the elder. That clearly tells us that Japheth was the oldest. He was the elder. Probably Shem and then Ham, or Ham. Unto Shem also, the father of the children of Eber. Eber is a word which means stranger or pilgrim. Who's the most famous Eber that you can think of in your Bible? Abram the Eber became Abraham the Hebrew. So we're talking in this particular family, Shem, also the father of all the children of Eber. I'm selecting certain verses as we go through this because for the sake of time, just to let you see that all these things are just trucking right along here. The brother of Japheth the elder, unto him were children born. Shem, the father of the children of Eber. The children of Shem are Elam, Asher, Aphaxad, Lud, and Aram. Now, Aram is apparently the father of a language known as Aramaic language. That is the language that Jesus spoke. Aramaic. Remember when Jesus spoke out on the cross, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani? Nobody could understand what he was saying. He was speaking in a language that they had never heard before. Apparently, that is a language that had died down over the period of the Old Testament, but it started right here. Everything starts in these first 11 chapters. Aram, the father of the Aramaic language. It would be basically Syria today. The children of Aram were Uz, Hul, Gaither, and Mash. Not Gaither, not as in Bill, but Gaither, and then Mash, not as in Mash like the TV show, but Mahash would be, it would have M-A-A apostrophe. You have that little hitch and you get along, Ma'ash. That's the way you pronounce that. The children of Aram were Uz, Hul, Gaither, and Ma'ash. Okay, you have to hit yourself when you say that word. Aphaxad begat Salah. Salah begat Eber. There's his ancestry. Unto Eber were born two sons. First name was Peleg. Peleg. Notice that. In his day was the earth divided. Names were important. And so apparently on the day that he was born, his father named his children, one of them, Peleg, because it was on that day that the language was divided at the Tower of Babel. Now, that's important for only one basic reason, because God is giving us a pretty much of an ironclad genealogy of this thing. And we pretty much have a chronology that we can trace. We find all these people and how old they were and so forth. And Peleg, when Peleg was born, that's apparently the time that the Tower of Babel, the confusion of the languages began. And the earth was divided. So again, just let you see how these things all just kind of follow in place. Dwelling was from Meshach. You go to the mountain of the east, the sons of Shem, after their tongues, their lands, and after their nations. The Shemite nation, the nation of Jewish people. Before they were Jewish, they were Shemites, Semites, Shemites, the descendants of Shem, Japhethites, the descendants of Japheth, and of course Ham basically are the other people in the Canaanites and all of that. These are the families of the sons of Noah after their generations. You have to understand that God clearly lays them all out. By these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood. This is going to take place here. We're going to come up on it on the Tower of Babel, Tower of Babel, or Babel, however you want to pronounce that, where it was always divided, where the land was divided. Now, as we get to the Tower of Babel, chapter 11, verses 1 through 4, what is significant about that? What did God tell those people to do when they came out of the ark? I'm sorry? What did God tell them to do? Spread out, and repopulate the earth. What did they do?
They stayed together.
They came right into where the optimum situation was. And again, they're doing the very same thing that they had done before. God told them to spread out, go out and repopulate the earth. But they didn't do that. They came right into an area. The whole earth was one language and of one speech. Now that's a problem. It wouldn't be a problem if they could handle it. But a lot of times people can't handle the blessings of God. They could understand each other. They could talk to one another. They lived together. But they did not live in unity and harmony. Because one of them was rising up to the top. That would be Nimrod. And others were there was a lot of jealousies and things happening. The whole earth was of one language and of one speech. So you can imagine, I don't know what language it was. Whatever language it happened to have been, they all understood each other. They had a written language. These people are not alley-oops. These people are very intelligent. They know about fire. They know about writing. They drew pictures on the walls and so forth. They knew about certain things. They knew about travel. They knew about establishing homes and things like that. These are not a bunch of cavemen. These are not a bunch of alley-oops. These are people who have intelligence. They know how to cook. They know basic things. They can understand basic languages and so forth. But they were all located around the area of what we know today as Iraq. Now, if you'll remember back when we did the study of the Garden of Eden, the Garden of Eden is right down in this area. I've got another picture of that. The river Euphrates and the river Tigris. These two major rivers are still there today. Baghdad is in this area, and Babylon is right there on the Euphrates River, the two principal cities. Baghdad over here, and Babylonia right here. In that area, that is what does green mean on a map? What does green mean? Fertile. That's called the Fertile Crescent. The Fertile Crescent, all the way up, those river bottoms go all the way up to Haran and then down into what we know today as Israel. Notice this over here where Iran is and all of the mountains areas over that way. Here it's beginning this wilderness area, the wilderness of Arabia. But in the middle is a fertile crescent. No wonder that's where they went. If you had your choice, that's where you'd want to go. Now, remember, everything changed after the flood. Parts of the land began to become wilderness, desert area. Parts of it became snow-capped. There were no snow-capped mountains before then. Even the high mountains that were there, they weren't snow-capped because there wasn't that winter. There was no cold weather. Michael, you would have liked that. That's right. You enjoyed that. There wasn't this cold weather. It wasn't the hot weather. It was all this living in this greenhouse. Everything changed, however, after the flood. So after the flood, God told them to scatter and go out and populate the earth. But they didn't. They gathered in this basic area, right in this fertile crescent. And notice the rivers, the lakes, the huge rivers that in that area. There's a lot. I don't blame them for going and staying there, except God said don't do that. God said go out. So we've got a disappointment or a disobedience involved here. All right? Any thoughts or comments about that thus far? Now, I put this one up because I just found this particular one. The Persian Gulf, right in this area here is where the bottleneck is, a lot of people. But the Persian Gulf right there, probably the Garden of Eden was covered when the floodwaters ran off and the level of the Persian Gulf was raised. The level of all the oceans was raised when the floodwaters ran off. So the Garden of Eden was probably inundated at one time. That was on dry land. What was in the Garden of Eden that God had to protect? The tree of life. The tree of life. That tree does not exist anymore because it was covered up as the waters began to rise after the flood. Now, until the flood happened, it was there, but God still protected that tree of life. Remember how? With a flaming sword by an angel. The cherub was there, the seraphim were there to guard the tree of life. After the flood came out, everything changed, and the water level began to come up, and the Garden of Eden was inundated. If you will remember, when we studied the Garden of Eden, it had 4 rivers that came into it. Remember? 4 rivers. The Euphrates was one of them. Probably this Tigris right here was another one of them, that area right there. And then it divided up again this way. Hiddekel and Havilah. Okay, so those probably are inundated by the Persian Gulf today. It's probably still under there, but it is no longer existing as far as Garden of Eden is concerned. That's just to kind of let you see. Like, I'm not sure how to read that down at the bottom. It says Eden developed about 3,000 years ago. I'm not sure what that's probably 6,000. I'm not sure. I believe that's probably 6,000 years ago, which covered about 6,000 years ago right here. This man, in the opinion, the theory of whoever that is right there, I kind of go along with that we don't need 1 billion years to develop this earth. I'm a young earther. I don't think we need more than 4,000, 6,000 years or so for this to develop. But so probably that's basically, I'm surprised to find that, because you can't hardly find the good stuff like that teaching the conservative theology. You can't really do that. That's just a map to let you see where Edom was, and the Euphrates River, again, right here, that is still existing right there in modern-day Iraq. Okay? Here's what they said. Came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. That's that level area. A plain would be, they didn't go to East Tennessee. When you come to East Tennessee, you look for a mountaintop to build a home. And somehow or another, you build a house up on top of the mountain. I'm not sure how they get them up there, but they do. They wanted plain area. And what do you look for when you're going to build a house? Roger, what are you looking for when you're going to go to a new land and build? What do you want? What are you looking for? Level? What else? What else? Water. Got to have water. Remember, they didn't understand the seasons so well. It's developing. The seasons are developing: summer, winter, fall, and what's left, spring. But they didn't have it before that. But the descendants of these families, they're beginning to see there's a pattern involved here. We need to kind of get to a place where we can build a city. And so they built the city in the plains of Shinar, on the Euphrates and the Tigris rivers, probably around the Euphrates River, which is the area where Babylon was built. And they dwelt there. The word means they drove their stabs in the ground. There's another word in the Bible which means it's dwelt there, which means it's temporary. It's a tabernacle, but this is, they dwelt, they went there. Notice what they said. Well, here's another map for you. Better map. Babylon, right here. Over here in the Tigris River is where Baghdad is now located. But down here is the area of the Garden of Eden. Right there is Abraham's hometown, Ur of the Chaldees. That's where Abraham comes from. He goes right up in this area and followed the Euphrates River up to the top and then comes down into Israel on his journey. Babylon and all these other towns right here. Notice these dates that are right here. Okay? They found this land and they developed the land of Shinar. Here's what they said. Let us make brick. Are they going to stay there? Is this going to be permanent? It's going to be permanent. Let's make brick, burn them thoroughly. What is the significance of that? Burning or firing the brick. Making them permanent. Right. They're going to stay there. What did God say do? Go out. They came in. Let's fire the bricks. Probably that scene in the movie 10 Commandments was probably close to reality. They had a little frame. They put mud in that thing, put some straw in that stuff, and then let it bake in the sun or whatever. That's probably pretty close. Let's burn them. Let's make bricks that hardens them and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone and slime. Slime. Now that's not slime like Ghostbusters slime. What that word is, bitumen. They had bitumen. That's the same thing they coated the ark with inside and out. They had bitumen for mortar. But by the way, these people are not dummies. These guys know stuff. They know how to build stuff. It's amazing some of the things that they've built. The ruins are still there, and they're still right there. The pyramids are... Do you see the pyramids? Did you get to go to Egypt? Well, you lived in Egypt. How long did you live in Egypt?
About 6 months.
Oh, about 6 months? Oh, I thought you went through high school there. Tried to take over and they run you out or something.
But I didn't live there through high school.
Oh, okay.
But I did climb around on
Yeah, I did too. I was with 72 other people. 70 of them were Methodists, and 3 of us were Baptists. And I was a Baptist preacher. They called me the preacher. And I said, I'm going to climb up on the pyramids. Now, I'm not going to come all the way to Egypt here and not get up on the pyramids.
They won't let you do it.
I know, they wouldn't let us do it either, but I got up there. They got me down, but I got up. I went up about 3 levels. You couldn't have, that earthquake that happened this morning or whenever it was, did y'all remember the earthquake? Did you feel the earthquake? How about you folks up in Cosby? You didn't feel the earthquake? Yeah. Did you? Really? Shook it, and all the chandeliers and all that stuff, and all the gold crystal and all the treasures that you got in your house up there? The pyramids are still right there today. The pyramids were probably built about the time of Abraham. When Abraham went down into Egypt, probably the pyramids were being built at that time.
3,000 years old.
Huh?
They were 3,000 years old.
And that would be about the time. That's right. About that time that Abraham went involved down there. So extremely, they're very intelligent, very smart people. The architects, the designers of those things, they have all of those trapdoors and things that are on the inside.
They get those big rocks up that high.
Well, how would you got them up there? Well, see, they're smarter than me and you.
They built scaffolding.
You reckon? I don't know.
No, they still don't know. They still don't know.
Said they had inside,
On the backs of lots of slaves.
There's an internal, they just discovered where they have internal slopes inside that.
Inside of.
More than a 7-degree angle, because that was about what they had to have to get them up.
That's right.
And then to make the turn, they left the ends of the pyramids open. And if you look at the pyramids where they made the turn,
Yeah.
they're gone. They're missing where they would have made the turn to go up.
To go up. To slide it right up with all the slave labor and to roll it up. You got the same thing in building the temple in Jerusalem. I have seen the stones in the foundation of that thing. They moved those things about 20 miles from the Jordan River up the mountain to the top where Jerusalem is located. Listen, God, these people are smart. These people know how to do things, how to build things. Steve was talking one time, we were talking about that. Steve, you mentioned it would take about 3 or 4 big cranes, I don't know what you call them, the name of the cranes, to pick up one of those stones. 3 or 4 of them working together on the biggest ones that are there. One of them is 26 feet long, the foundation stones. And they quarried it, cut it out, and moved it up the mountain. Stonehenge. Those people cut those stones. They're smart people. Those were smart people. These are not alley-oop types. These are not cavemen types. These people knew things. And they said, let's make brick. Let's burn them thoroughly. They probably knew that if they didn't burn them, they would not last. Fire them, as we would say today, put them in the kiln. They had brick for stone and slime, bitumen for mortar. They also the Romans invented concrete that set up underwater. These are smart people, okay? Here we go. This is a actual photograph. Probably the foreground, this area here, is probably what is known as the Hanging Gardens. The Hanging Gardens, the ziggurat out in the background is probably an artist's conception. That's a ziggurat right there. Probably an artist's conception of the Tower of Babel, probably. It has been said that it was rounded, and the foundation that is there is in fact round, but this right here is probably just an artist's conception. The Hanging Gardens, the king's wife missed her hometown of the mountains and the beautiful mountains, and so he built her a mountain. He built it for her and built it up on top of one of these ziggurats and planted gardens up there to make her feel right at home. Ain't that a nice husband? Wouldn't that be nice? Build me a mountain where I can go up and be like back home. The threat was I'm going back home if you don't. So the Hanging Gardens, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world in Babylon. Beautiful, beautiful city. Probably that's a ziggurat right there, and it could have been the artist's conception of the singing tower, Tower of Babel. Let's build a city. Here we go, and a tower whose top may reach to heaven. What's that all about? Let us make a name, lest we be scattered abroad on the face of the whole earth. Now, what are they doing?
They're trying to outsmart God.
Okay, how are they trying to outsmart God, Bill?
Build it high enough, maybe they can avoid another worldwide flood like that.
There you go. They're building a tower whose top may reach to heaven. They can't reach to heaven. But as far as they know, if they can get it up there, if there is a flood, they can have safety. But the promise had been given that there will never be another flood. They don't have to do this, but they don't trust God. They don't believe God. God said, go out and scatter and do it. They said, let's build us a city and a tower whose top may reach to heaven, and let us make a name. What kind of name are they trying to make? What does that mean? Make a name. That expression, boy, he's got a name. He's got a name for this. He's got a name for that. What does that mean? Make them famous. A name for people that are smarter than God. Let's make us a name. This will be a name. Nowadays, the Tower of Babel, the foundation of it, and the ruins of Babylon is there. What is a name that they have? They tried to outsmart God, and God outsmarted them. Let us make a name. Now, probably Nimrod was a part of that. He probably was the leader of the city of Babylon. He was a military man, a mighty hunter, a mighty person, probably a big dude. And so he was probably leading them. Let's make us a name. We want to make a name. We've got to have a name. Unless we be scattered abroad. Lest we be scattered abroad. God said go scatter. God said to go scatter. They said we've got to get together so we won't be scattered. And so we have what happens. You know the rest of the story, I'm sure, the rest of the narrative. This is rebuilt. Notice the little modern day trucks down here at the bottom. This is a rebuilt, Saddam Hussein was rebuilding part of that. Saddam Hussein considered himself as a modern-day Nebuchadnezzar. And so he was going to try to build it. He's going to try to build it back. And you notice that there are tourists right here. If I was over there, I'd be right there too. I'd be wanting to see the thing too. I'm just that way, building the city once again. Now then, scattering of the nations. The Lord came down to see the city. Did God have to come down to see the city? So what does that mean? I'm sorry?
He wasn't happy.
He wasn't happy. The Lord came down to see the city. And the tower which the children of men were building, as opposed to God building something. People were doing this. The Lord came down. Dramatize that for me. Go.
He wanted his presence to be known.
There you go. It's His presence. The Lord came down for them to see, not for Him to see. He already knows what He's going to do. He already knows what's happening there. What's the problem? The problem was identified back in the former verses. They were of one mind, one language, and they all followed that one leader. And He's leading them wrong. So the Lord came down to see the city, for the city to see Him, and the tower, which the children of men, that's the expression children of men, is a kind of an earthly or an earthy expression. These are human beings, little bitty human beings are building this great big city. Let's go down and see what's going on. The Lord said, these people are one, they have one language, and this is what they begin to do. And nothing will be restrained from them. They won't stop, which they have imagined to do. That word imagination, do we remember that word from before the flood? Their imagination was only what? Evil continually. And that's what caused the flood. Now then, they're doing exactly the same thing. They're coming together again. They are rebelling against the clear teaching of God. Moses knew this. Moses is writing this many hundreds of years after the fact. How did he get this? Moses wasn't alive when this was done. Moses wasn't even born when this was done. How did he get this? How does he know this? There you go. That's why we have an inspired Scripture. We have the inspired Word of God. We leave that out sometimes when we say Moses wrote. Moses is the writer, but God is the author. And God gave it to him, clearly. So Moses, of course, another one of those smart guys. He was a lawyer. He made laws. He was a lawgiver. And he was quite intelligent, educated there in Egypt. The school system that was there, quite intelligent. And God gave it to him. This is what was in their mind. The people he didn't hear God say that. Moses didn't hear that. But God told him this is what they said. The people is one, and they have one language, and this they begin to do. Can you read it like that? And this is what they're doing? This, they have that one language, they have everything going for them, they have a great leader, this man, and this is what they're doing? Can you just kind of see the sarcasm involved in that? Let's see what we can do here. Nothing is going to be restrained from them which they have imagined to do, because their imagination is only evil continually. So let's go down and let's confound. The word confound, balal, B-A-L-E-L, balal, or B-A-L-B-E-L, babel. Let's cause a disturbance and confusion at the gate. At the gate. What is the gate? At the gate. What does that mean? We're going to cause a confusion and a disturbance at the gate.
Beginning is where the entrance.
The judges and the rulers would come to the land, the important people of the land would come to the gate. They would have court and things.
At the gate, right. That's where the rulers took out. That's the city hall. That's the city hall, at the gate. Remember in the story, the narrative, I keep saying it, I'm trying to stay away from that word, at the narrative of Ruth, also in Esther, Mordecai was sitting in the gate. In the narrative of Ruth, Boaz was sitting in the gate. That means he was an official. He was at the city hall, a judge. He was a person of prominence. So let's go down and confound, cause a disturbance at the gate, from the top down. Let's get them. Let's confound them, confuse them, cause a disturbance at the city, at the gate, so that they may not understand one another's speech. Well, now what would that cause? What?
That's happening right now, Mark.
Really? You mean they can't talk to one another?
They would get mad if one asked for a brick and he handed him something else, wouldn't they?
Yeah. Now, Jesus said something about that. What man is there if your son asks for a bread and you give him a snake? This caused a disturbance. This caused confusion at the gate. Now, I'm headed to a specific point. Some of you might be already catching where we're going here, because we've got about 6 minutes here to finish this up. Let us go down there and confound, balal, to cause a disturbance and confusion at the gate. I'm not sure if the city was called Babel at that time. It's going to be called Babel now because of that word, confound, balal, the confusion, the disturbance, so that they may not understand one another's speech. Does anybody know where I'm headed yet?
I got one thing to ask you before.
Go, Frank.
What's so exciting about this is, read that very first top line. Let us. Who is us?
Well, I reckon that's got to be somebody with God, hasn't it? Let us.
Same thing in the beginning.
Let us. God doesn't need any help, but he always includes people into his plan. That's right. There they are. And probably about a half a dozen gazillions of angels, too.
And they're good with today saying that. Let us do it and not God. Don't let God in really.
Now, really? You really think that?
Well, it seems to me that.
We've legislated God plumb out of the thing. He doesn't exist anymore. Lest cause a disturbance and confuse, they may not understand one another's speech. Anybody know where we're going biblically? Just hang in there. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence on the face of the earth, and because of that, they left off building the city. They couldn't understand. They would say, and he would say, what? Do what? What do you want? They couldn't understand one another's language. The Chick tracts are, it's a beautiful picture in the Chick tracts about this. One of them is saying, que paso. Now, I don't know what que paso means, but it's Spanish. Anybody know what que paso means? What's happening? Que paso? What's happening? Somebody else was talking in Russian and all the rest of it. I don't know what languages they were, but the Lord scattered them abroad because they couldn't. How would they now settle? How would they decide with whom to settle now? The language. The language, you got this group over here, you got this group over here, this group over here. You got the Methodists, you got the Baptists, you got the Presbyterian, you got the Church of God. You got all these different people that speak all these different languages over here. The views expressed are this, not necessary. Okay. The Lord scattered them abroad from thence on the face of the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore,
You know, they still use the word babble. What are you babbling about?
yeah. Babel means to do that, to babble. and probably it started right here because of that word right there, Babel, B-A-L-B-E-L, Babel, which means to cause disturbance and confusion. Babel. What are you babbling about? The name of it is called Babel or Babel because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth, and from thence he scattered them abroad. Now, this has a corresponding counterpart in the Bible. There was a time later on when God brought them together. Remember what it was? Pentecost. When the church was formed, God brought them back together. They all heard the gospel in their language. Every doctrine in the Bible is found in seed form. It might be in the opposite, in the negative, expressed in the negative. Separation, coming together. Separation over here, confusion, coming over here. A Pentecost in reverse. We speak the same language. When I was in Israel, we were at the Garden Tomb. We were observing communion, and I was one of the ones that was chosen to lead in the communion. Like I said, I was the only Baptist in the crowd. I guess they had to do something with me. I guess they asked me to do that. I got to lead in the communion. Michael, that's a tremendous thing. You mentioned how that. By the way, we got another one coming up the second Sunday, I believe it is, of January, of communion. What a service that is. I was there, and I was helping to lead in communion at the Garden Tomb. Right from the garden, we were standing here. There was an amphitheater that would hold a large group. We were 73 people, not counting our guides and so forth. So it took a rather large amphitheater, and we were there. And there were groups over here and groups over there and groups over here. Down there was the Garden Tomb, and people were going in and out. People were there, and they were taking pictures and everything. And we were setting up to do the communion, the Lord's Supper. And the most gorgeous voice I have ever heard began singing in German, "Because He lives." I didn't know what she was saying because she was singing it in German, but she was singing it, the melody. I got the melody. I got that. So we may be separated by this and that and some of the, but we are one. I stayed one time. I went to Raleigh, North Carolina, to help start a little church over there, and I stayed in the home of a man from IBM named Roger Dameron. Maybe no, you were Xerox, weren't you? Not okay. His name was Roger Dameron, I believe was his last name, and we were talking around the table that night before the service. He said, we Christians might be in a minority, but we are everywhere. We are everywhere. So the confusion is a sad state of affairs, but God turned it and brought them back together again at Pentecost. Any thoughts or comments about this thus far?
When you going to talk about Nimrod?
Nimrod is a non-starter. To be such a powerful man today, he's a non-starter. We don't know anything about Nimrod. He built a palace, he built a castle, built a tower, built something or other, and then that bingo, we never hear from him again. Just like God says, just like a flea, knocking a flea off. Get away from here. You know, so that's my story about Nimrod. What do you want to talk about? Nimrod?
Isn't he sort of like the father of a lot of people?
Well, see, that's the thing. Is he? Was he? Doesn't say that. We say it is. Don't be such a Nimrod. He's just a mighty man. He's like those giants in the land. What part do they play? They don't play any part. There was evil. There were giants in the land. There was evil. And so the flood came. So Nimrod is just a guy that came on, and we name our Christmas trees after him. He was a leader. He could have, think about what he had going for him. He could have been such a Moses, such a David, such a Solomon, such an Enoch, such a Samuel. He could have been all these things wrapped into one. But he wasn't. He went against the plan of God, and God said, I don't hear from you again. Not going to hear from you again. Any other thoughts or comments? We have now finished the first 11 chapters through verse 9. That is it. From there on, the next verse is Abraham, from here on out, all the way through, well, until he dies. So we will stop right here. Jordan, you know what you're going to do next week? Whatever. You got a whole book of sermons there that you can work on. Okay. Then we'll come back and we'll take up from again. We can keep on going, or we can do something else. It doesn't matter to me. I'm just with you. I'll be right here next Wednesday week about that. Any other thoughts or comments? Yes, ma'am.
When I was trying to read Genesis back in the day, and all of those names,
Yeah.
I just quit reading.
Okay.
I just didn't understand. It was boring. This person got this person, we got that person. I just quit. We brought it all together.
Well, join the crowd. There are little nuggets in there. I really don't care what Joktan did. I really could care less what Joktan did. I don't even know who his daddy was. But I do know about Aram. I do know some of those guys that we pick out there. You're going to see different names. You'll find them in there. You'll see them in there. Which family is prominent now from here on? Shem. Shem. That's the Oriental family. That's the family of our Lord and our Lord Jesus Christ. Anything else? Go, Frank.
Is this going to compare with the correlation of the dispersion of the church?
It very well could. The dispersion of Israel, too. The dispersion that they had. They're always coming back. Now, today...
The church wasn't going to move until God had to disperse.
That's exactly right. And because of the judgment that came, they scattered and they went everywhere. Now, today, the tares and the wheat are coming back into bundles. We're joining together again in a relationship that we don't need to be a part of. Now, guys, hey, listen, I am what I am. And I want to be nice. I try to be nice. I try to get along with people. I don't want to make anybody purposely mad, but there are some relationships out there we just don't need to have. We just don't. And that's what happened. God says in the latter days, the tares and the wheat are coming together, and they're going to be bound up in bundles to burn. See, we don't need to be a part of that at all. I don't need to be a part of the World Council of Churches. I don't need to be a part of that at all. And just because somebody's got a name in front of their title behind their name, some of these guys got more degrees than a thermometer has, but they don't know nothing.
Now, what do you mean? Jews came from the Oriental?
No, the Shemites, yeah.
So they were Oriental type people?
The Jews, yes.
Does that mean they were like from Japan?
No, they're from Israel, from the area right there, from this area right here, Shinar.
Well, I always thought Oriental meant Asian.
Well, yeah, but the Oriental is the olive-skinned.
Oh.
Jesus was not white. I hate to bust anybody's bubble, but Jesus Christ was Oriental, olive-skinned. He was not white.
He came unto his own.
That's right. Any other thoughts or comments? We can come back to these at any point and any time, okay? But this is as far as I had planned on going. Okay, Brother Jordan, would you lead us in prayer, please, sir?
Heavenly Father, thank you for this day you've given us, Lord, and thank you for just Bible study, Lord, the things that the Word brings out to us, Lord. We can see it, we read it, we know it, we look around, and it's just proof to our own hearts that it's true. We didn't
Yeah.
need any more proof, but Lord, you just keep showing.
Keep throwing it to us.
Keep showing that your Word is true. Lord, help us to fall more in love with your Word every day. Lord, do this as we leave this place, we celebrate the season, celebrate your coming, and look forward to your second coming. Thank you, Lord, for all that you do for us. Ask you to be with us in all things. In Jesus' name.
Amen. God bless you, folks. Get you some bread. Thank you. Thank you. Get you a loaf of bread back there. Ain't that right, David?
That's right. I don't know what you said, but
Get some bread. Get the bread out of here. Oh, by the way, BTW, by the way, man walked up to me Sunday, handed me a Christmas card. Inside the card was a check for over $3,000 to pay for the radio broadcast for a year. So we are the recipient of gifts like that all the time. And I say thank you. I thank the Lord. I sure do. Amen. Hey. Hey, no, Chris. Mhm. Yeah.
I said, you said $10. That's what I made. Okay. He took me up there to Jerry's. Daughter. I'll tell everybody. She does.
back to the ground.
The road. Brenda, her initials in red. You know what her boots?
The mailbox is free.
Yes. I'm so proud of myself. Because I was going to take it to California. I didn't know where else to go. There were some places I've got a sweater that has something right here. So I just think they're so. I went down to River and Shrina's going to tell me about it. Still working. Yeah.